Twitter. All right, we are live from day 3 of PlebLab SatsBuy. So I got my friend here, Shaun. Shaun, how you doing, man?
I'm doing well, thank you.
All right. Well, for those in the audience who don't know yet or don't know what you do in Bitcoin, tell us a little about yourself.
I guarantee nobody knows.
So, the shadowy supercoder, is that who you are?
No, shadowy non-coder. Yeah. So no, I my day job, I work as a residential construction project manager, and but in my spare time, working on building an app for construction project management that incorporates non-custodial Bitcoin wallet.
Yeah, I know. I mean, you showed me that a little bit earlier. It's honestly, I think it's really sick because I think that there's kind of a huge issue, one, with like kind of getting I mean, maybe some contractors are better at this than others, but I think like one of the problems is like, one, not defining a scope of work like initially or having it kind of in writing, and then two, kind of like the payment issue with all of that. So, what does your app solve that you like? What are some of the problems that you ran into? And yeah, what was the kind of, I guess, desire to start building this and building it with Bitcoin opposed to maybe like, I don't know, using a fiat kind of payment rail, whether it's PayPal or something along those lines?
Yeah. So the basic goal, it's an idea I've had for a while. It's called Easy Subcontractor, and this is easysubcontractor.com. And it kind of evolved out of wanting to help small specialty subcontractors get better exposure to good builders. A lot of times a good builder won't share their subs. And the subs maybe aren't that savvy on marketing and things like that. So maybe try to create a central place that you could have a good list of good subs. And that was kind of the original idea.
Almost like a database for like subcontractors.
Yeah, exactly. Just, gotcha. The phone book isn't around anymore. When my first construction business, I actually paid $4,500 for a phone book ad that delivered absolutely zero work. Jeez. And it was like, it was like 2006. It was probably like the last year they even made a phone book.
The last ditch effort, huh?
Yeah. So I got sold on that. Yeah. So just an idea to create a place for subcontractors to get in the face of builders and then maybe even homeowners. It's kind of just a basic idea. But then what really motivated me was the thought of incorporating Bitcoin and specifically doing like smart contracts.
Okay.
So being able to, like you said, define a scope of work, then lock up the funds for that work in a multi-sig. And then when the work is complete, the contractor signs their part, that sends it to the property owner to sign their part. And then the funds are distributed. So locks up the funds from the customer's perspective, like, hey, I'm not giving this contractor a deposit that they can run away with. And then also the contractor knows, like, hey, if I do a good job and finish the work, that money is sitting there. It's not a question of whether or not they're going to get paid, because it happens more often than people might think that, maybe people don't have their money like as organized as they should, or they're over budget and, they've got to scrap money from somewhere to get you paid. Or, luckily in my whole time, I've only ever had to place one lien on a property to get paid for work that I had done. And then beyond that, also, I want the platform to be very simple, like just boiled down to as basic as it can be to effectively manage a project, no matter what member of the team you are. So if you're the property owner, you could kind of oversee. If you're a general contractor, managing subcontractors. If you're a subcontractor, managing your scope of work, and then maybe your sometimes subs have subs. So it's whether you're managing your employees or your subs. It's kind of the overall idea, because really, I mean, at the base of it, construction is pretty simple. You're tracking a to-do list. Like there's things that need to be done. I mean, I guess you could say this for any project manager.
No, but I think it's a little different too with like, construction and like kind of subcontractors and contractors in general, because like you said, it's in the name, it's a contract work, right? So it has to be kind of, I guess, laid out in the beginning as to, what the expectations are. So you guys are both on the same page. And I imagine that communication can get kind of muddied, in certain aspects too, like on both ends,
Yeah,
and then not only that, it can be tough with payment. I imagine, I have one real estate property. So, I mean, I'm not saying I'm a real estate expert by any means, but from speaking to other real estate investors, their biggest thing is if you find a good contractor that you can trust and can do the work and all that kind of stuff, like hold on to them, because I've heard a lot of horror stories of contractors who kind of like you described, on the other side of the coin where, maybe you give them money to go buy the goods previously or like not like before the job even starts, and then you never hear from that guy again. So I think it is interesting, but I do have a question, and it's going to be kind of like almost like why Bitcoin, and then why did you like, because you looked at it from like the smart contract aspect, and obviously I'm a Bitcoin maxi, so I'm glad that you're going this route. But why did you, or like, I guess, how did you kind of avoid going into the maybe like the shitcoiny route where you're doing like Ethereum? Because that seems like where I guess smart contracts were kind of, I don't want to say like popularized, but like that was maybe what got the most publicity was like a smart contract on Ethereum. So, how did you avoid, I guess, going down that rabbit hole, or did you?
So I already abandoned any shitcoinery before I actually started working on this.
Okay,
so
I gotcha.
Yeah, I mean, obviously I still have to work, so I'm not wealthy, but I made a little bit of money, like very tiny amount of money on Shibu, when it ran up in the 21, bull market, and played around with a little Doge and a little Ethereum. But even like after like, doubling a small amount of money, I was like, that was weird. That was lucky. Stop it. You're not a trader. And it was really during the 21 run up where I really went down the rabbit hole. Like I heard about Bitcoin in 2009 on like a radio story, and it was like, oh, there's this new digital currency that launched. Memory is fuzzy, as they say, but I'm pretty sure I remember where I was sitting when I heard this radio story and talking to my business partner and going, man, there's this new digital currency that is, you can like mine with a computer now somehow, but it's only worth like 200, 1/200th of a penny. So we should probably focus on our painting business. And yeah, of course.
I mean, no, but like it's always revisionist history, right?
Yeah.
Everybody can play Monday morning quarterback and look at it and be like, hey, I like, me, for example. So the first time I heard about it was in 2012. I remember this vividly because I was in college, freshman year of college. I came back. I'm from Austin, and I had a buddy who was in the business school here in Macombs School of Business. And we were doing, and I remember this vividly because it was like 2012, the world was supposed to end, right? That was the end of like the Mayan calendar or whatever it was. Maybe it was like the Aztecs or something. I don't remember, but 12 or is it 12? No, it was December 2021st. Yeah, that's right. Mic up. But yeah, sorry.
Well, that date is really 2046 because of the unlucky days.
Oh, now it is.
We can go there if you want.
Yeah, we can maybe go down that rabbit hole. But anyway, I remember this because me and my friends, like, I mean, his birthday was on the day that was supposed to be the last day of the year. And so, I mean, being a freshman in college, we use any excuse we can to get blackout drunk. Sure. So we got hammered. But before we got hammered, we went and we were talking to him, and he's like, yeah, dude, I don't know what it was, but we just had some presentation on Bitcoin, and I think this is the future. And I was like, oh, cool. And then that was really all we said about it. We didn't really get into it much. Then we proceeded to drink probably like Natty Light or whatever. And all his fraternity brothers were out of town. So we went and just, painted that frat house red, and just got absolutely blitzed. But I mean, I remember hearing about it then. And then I graduated college, or I was about to graduate college, and I heard one of my buddies, he's like, yeah, I'm working at this internship of this company. And this guy I know, he ended up, I don't know, turning in a little bit of money on Bitcoin into like $10 million or whatever it was. Like it was a significant amount of money. So the guy retired at like 35. So I remember hearing that story, and it was like right before I graduated college. Then I graduated college, and what I did was I drove Uber a little bit while doing TA and all that kind of stuff. I'd use the Uber money. I'd go drive one night, and then I'd go spend about half of what I made on beer the next night. And I'd use the other half and I'd buy Bitcoin, but I was trading it because I was like, I need to make this go a little bit farther. And so I would look at like articles on the internet as to like what coin is going to go up. And I made a lot of money on Doge too. So, I mean, not a lot. Like, let's get things straight. Like, I was driving Uber. So it was like I was putting in like $100 a week or whatever it was. But I made enough where I'm like, all right, I don't need to drive Uber anymore. Like, this will last me a few weekends and then I can go and do the same thing. And yeah, but I do remember that. And I remember, just kind of like educating myself then. And then when I graduated, I was like, all right, I'm driving around Uber. I was listening to all these podcasts, Preston Pish and all this kind of stuff. And that's when I'm like, all right, this might have some validity behind it. And that's when I'm going to, start like, I basically started putting in every paycheck. It wasn't a DCA, I would say. I was getting paid every 2 weeks. So every 2 weeks, some of that paycheck was going to Bitcoin. But at that time, I didn't know much about cold storage or anything like that. So I was doing it all on Robinhood and all that kind of stuff. But luckily, Robinhood allowed you to take it off because I had like a significant amount on there for a little bit. And I was like, all right, this is getting kind of nerve wracking with the things that it's going. So I don't know. I think everybody kind of has that, journey or like, first time they'd heard it. And yeah, you could kick yourself in the butt or whatever, but everybody gets Bitcoin at the price they deserve. I know that's the cheesy saying.
I believe that.
I that's a cheesy saying, but it takes a certain kind of curiosity to dive into it. It takes, I think a certain amount of ability to handle risk and deal with that volatility. And I mean, it just takes some caring too, I think, because you can give people Bitcoin, and maybe we could get into the orange pilling story about orange pilling contractors and seeing how that's going with you guys. But I've gifted Bitcoin to friends, family, and all that. And, I never like when that price goes down, I'm their least favorite person in the world. And when that price goes up, that's when they actually start to listen to me. So, with your experience with contractors, is this just an app that you kind of want to use personally? So that's why you're building it? Or have you tried to like go to other, maybe some of your contract buddies or something like that and seen if this is something that interests them? Like whether it's just through orange pilling or just kind of just showing them that. And then at the end, kind of telling them, well, it's with Bitcoin.
Yeah. So kind of all the above and the last things there, but real quick. So then my real introduction to Bitcoin was 2014, Andreas on Rogan. And I think kind of like you, when you had that class or had your buddy give you a breakdown or something they heard about, like I was like immediate, like it made sense. I was like, this is amazing. Cause I'd been watching, documentaries. I forget what it's called. And Woody Harrelson was in it, but they talked about, just the reality of money. And I always thought money was kind of goofy, but this broke down kind of like, the whole Federal Reserve is as federal as Federal Express and has no reserves, kind of trope, and made me realize just how phony all the money was. And then seeing Andreas, and I was like, oh, this makes sense. Oh, this makes governments obsolete. This creates all sorts of interesting incentives in the world because of the way this thing works. But then it's got to stay together. And so, 9 years later now we're seeing that it's staying together and getting stronger all the time.
Yeah, for sure.
And so that was my, first real introduction to it there. As far as like orange pilling the contractors, it's something I'm definitely one of those people that's like, no matter what conversation I'm in, I'm probably going to drop Bitcoin into it 90% of the time.
Good for you.
And I don't care. I'm not shy about it. I have there's a lot of people in Bitcoin like, oh, you should be a NIM and you should be anonymous and don't ever tell anybody you have Bitcoin, or, don't do what I do. I don't have my water bottle here, but I have some Bitcoin stickers on my coffee mug. It's like, I'm one of the people that's like, no, we should be like, hey, I'm here. I'm a Bitcoiner. This is money. That's all it is. I'm not some shadowy super coder. This is the future, and hopefully we get to a point where people are just like, yeah, whatever, it's money. Like, as fun as it is to be in the little niche community that
dropping them memes on Twitter, all that kind of stuff.
So, but then talking to people on the job side about Bitcoin, frankly, it's the spot where I get the most reception to it.
Really?
Is with people that are doing real physical work. proof of work, right? And I don't even get to the proof of work conversation, but with most of them, sometimes we get there, but usually it's just like people are out there busting their ass every day doing real work, not sitting in a cubicle shuffling papers. I mean, that has value too. That obviously keeps things going.
Yeah.
But there's something about dealing, like people that deal with physical reality every day, certain concepts seem to sink in faster. Like especially when it's rooted in truth,
No, I agree
because they
with that.
sniff out bullshit real quick of, because there's real world physical consequences. If you're a bad builder, your house falls down, it
Yeah.
leaks, catches on fire, any of that stuff. And so, and they're feeling that pressure of, man, I'm working really hard. My money's not going as far as it used to. I'm not getting a raise that's at all keeping up with the pace of inflation. And so then you talk to them about the scarcity, and then they understand that, because usually, a lot of people just understand gold. And usually the conversation starts with, well, you have to start thinking about what money is really.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you think about that, what I've boiled it down to for a while, it's an agreement between individuals,
Yeah.
in a transaction. So
Yeah, medium of exchange, right? I
yeah.
mean, like you agree. And here, let me throw this out to you, and let me see if like you feel like this resonates with you, because I've kind of come around to the opinion that the blue collar worker, so to speak, is it might resonate. Bitcoin might resonate a little bit more with them because of kind of like some things that we laid out already. Like you put in the proof of work, you see that, hey, Ritzy so and so in some house, whatever, that I'm going to remodel wants this done. The materials that used to, like a year ago for this, or 2 years ago, or whatever it was, I've been doing this for 10 years. 10 years ago, I remember the materials for this were 5 times, 10 times, even 2 times less than, what it is now. And, they're willing to pay a set price of, this job done, whether it's 10 grand, 8 grand, whatever. I can't charge as much as I'd like to charge for my time as work, because it just makes this job for, a single person bathroom or whatever it is, 3 times the amount. So I'm cutting into my own margins to kind of do all that. And on top of that, I got to go at the end of the year. I got to have somebody go pay all my taxes, or I not pay all my taxes, but I got to go pay my taxes myself with all that stuff. My tax rate is going up because, I'm doing all this. Like, I have to pay a bookkeeper. I have to do all this kind of stuff. And people want more money to keep my books. People want to do this. They want to do that. So all the expenses around contracting is going up, where like the amount that people are going to pay for a certain job is not necessarily going up as quickly as everything else is going up. And, it's exactly like you said, the proof of work. They're tired. They're like, I'm sick of, this tech bro over here bitching and complaining about how their, raise of, 6% on their $200,000, whatever income that's secure and whatever. I'm sick of these guys complaining and wanting to work less, where I'm like out here and I'm working extra hours because I'm self-employed, grinding my ass off, working for all this stuff. And the expenses around me are all going up. And so I think like, as much as like Bitcoiners like to say, the proof of work, like the true like blue collar worker has been doing that proof of work for such a long time that they're just tired of it, man. They're just tired of like the inflation. And that's, maybe it's like a mindset thing or what, but I think like at first I thought, because Bitcoin's like the money of the internet, so to speak, that it wouldn't really resonate with somebody who, isn't, balls deep in the internet. Yeah. But I think like for me, now that I'm kind of, not only talking to you, but just kind of like reflecting on my Bitcoin journey and kind of, all the things that I see going on in Bitcoin, I think that, it might resonate with people who, I don't want to say like need it, like blue collar workers are struggling, because I think like the trades and everything are going to make a huge run back with, all this stuff going on. But like people like that, who like are actually putting in the work, opposed to like, somebody who's sitting behind a computer just, working like 3-4 hours, going to the water cooler, just kind of chatting, like very relaxed, where it's like, hey, like, if somebody comes to your job site and they see you not working for like 20 minutes or taking a lunch break, they're like, dude, what the hell? I'm paying you to do this, So I don't know. That was kind of a long-winded
Yeah,
rant, but do you think that that kind of like resonates with like the crowd that you're talking to, where like that proof of work, even though you don't even get to that aspect,
right,
they just understand that, you know, the current system's just fucked. So, and it's screwing them more than anybody else.
yeah, I think, you know, because also one of the things I first start with is like, you know, okay, one, you got to start with what you think about money. Okay, now next, understand their role. You know, and shouts out to Parker Lewis. I take this phrase from him, like, I think what he says precisely is all value in Bitcoin derives from the fact that there will ever be 21 million, is a kind of phrase. And I don't say that exactly to people, but I say, hey, there will only ever be 21 million. And by the way, did you know that about over 40% of the money that our government's ever printed was printed during COVID? And nobody has known that.
Yeah. I mean, it's like 60%, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, that's why I said over 40, because I was actually thinking, I think it's like 50 now.
Yeah. Yeah. It might have been.
And we're about to, you know, create some more probably.
Exactly.
And so that resonates with people with guys real quick. And then I, you know, break down like, you know, this, and usually you can point to the house we're working on. Like, this house was worth X a year ago and it's worth now. Well, the house isn't worth more. The money's worthless.
Yeah.
And it's worth less and worthless all at the same time.
It's the same house. The job that you did 5 years ago or whatever, nobody's gone in and redone that. You know, maybe some grout's coming up, or there's some like, you know, it needs to be redone or something like that. But the value of the house has gone up by $100,000 or, you know, whatever it is. So,
and I think on what you're talking about a contractor not getting pricing, you know, like, oh, I used to charge this much for this job. I feel like I can't charge more. I'm just going to eat it on the materials. I think that's true. And I think the reason is that a lot of times, especially if you're kind of a small owner operator that maybe didn't have any other business experience. Like, before I got into construction, I sold cars for 5 years.
mm-hmm.
So I'm very comfortable in understanding and building value in a product and not being afraid to ask for money.
Yeah, negotiating too.
Yeah. And it's even easier in construction because I don't negotiate on my bids.
Good.
People are like,
well, that's a tactic of negotiation, not negotiate. Right?
Thank you. It is. Yeah. It's, you know, they're like, well, you know, I mean, well, what's your best price? I'm like, this is my best price. Like, we can talk about doing less work.
Yeah.
Like, I have a well-defined scope of work that I gave you. So do you not want that custom finish? Do you want the more utilitarian commercial, you know, looking thing, or do you want the custom?
Yeah.
Do you want us to do the cheaper handrail versus the, you know, the one that you said you wanted?
Yeah.
And then people are like, what? I'm like, yeah, no, I wasn't guessing.
Yeah.
I made this price based on understanding my costs. And so that's kind of where I'm able to get back to, a lot of times contractors, it's not that they're not smart. It's just that maybe they're a little shy about asking for money, or they're not putting in the time to stay on top of repricing their work, or even properly pricing that work, because they've always just kind of bid from the hip and then figured it out afterwards, versus sitting down, doing a very thorough bid, understanding your current cost of materials, and then marking up from there, instead of just like, oh, this feels like a $5,000 job, when the materials you're going to use on this one may have gone up 30% in the past three months, which we saw.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't even know if it's that, where it's like they're not, you know, I mean, probably know better than me, but what I would think is like, you know, some of these guys too, they're like you said, kind of giving quotes out by the hip, kind of just sort of thing. And their biggest fear is losing that job and then not being able to put food on the table. You know, they need that job, you know, in order to eat. And so it's like the more of the fear of being self-employed. Do you think that's maybe the case? Or do you think, like, you know, kind of like what you were saying earlier, where it was like, you know, just people just not necessarily know their numbers?
I think it's both. I think they don't know the numbers and they're afraid of that. And
I mean, it's scary, dude. It's to be an entrepreneur, especially like in a trying to, I mean, it's easy to go in when you got, you know, a big backboard and all that stuff. But, you know, in a time like this, when, you know, maybe people aren't remodeling their homes as much or whatever, it's scary.
Yeah. I think a lot of small guys, especially, they're actually just going out of business one job at a time, and they just don't know it until it hits them, until they really get behind the eight ball. Because maybe you've got good cash flow and you can kind of keep things moving until it all catches up with you. And I've been in that boat and then clawed my way out of it after learning the lessons. And and I got to the point where I would just tell customers straight up, I was like, I can stay at home and make no money. Like, no, no, I'm not going to do that. Or, you just more of a joke, or, you say to another contractor or somebody you've got rapport with, but
I get what you're saying though. You're like, hey, like I've had this situation with like my Airbnb business too, where I'm like, hey, like, we had a contract. This is what we negotiated. You signed it. Like, if you're not happy with it, I can go find somebody else. You could go find other work. Like, we don't have to necessarily work together if it isn't like agreed upon. And that's like the strongest negotiating tactic is the ability to walk away. And that's where I think like some of these, contractors are kind of losing it, unfortunately, because like I said, like, I think, we've had this tech boom where everybody has kind of been fleeing to tech jobs. Everybody's been saying, oh, learn how to code, do all this kind of stuff. But they're neglecting a lot of the things that run the entire, country. Like, you need safe buildings to operate, to be able to code. You need to be able to have enough power to all these places. You need to be able to have air conditioning in very hot temperate climates so people can be comfortable. Like, you need all these things that I think that a lot of people have just realized that we've gotten spoiled for so long that, not enough people are like working in that. And so,
well, we've devalued the trades too.
Exactly.
Like, oh, if you're working with your hands, you failed somehow. It's like, what are you talking about? Like, do you realize the built environment you move around in every day and you just take that for granted? Like,
100%.
A person put that outlet there that we're looking at, right? Like, somebody painted this wall.
Somebody put together this whole space that we're in, I mean, exactly. Like, even if like the building's old or whatever, it still needs to be maintained, right? I mean, and it's, we were talking a little bit earlier too. It's like, all right, well, we're setting up for a hackathon and you're like, well, I could drill into like a 10-inch wall, a 10-inch thick concrete wall to put up this sign if we need to do it, because, you have those skills where it's like, like you said, it's a shame what's happened to the trades, because, I just like, if you've been trying to remodel your home or do some kind of work in the past like 2 years, it's been very hard to like get a contractor where it's like, hey, like, I'm ready to go tomorrow. You basically have contractors that are waiting like 3-4 months out. And then like, you never know what's going to happen at that point. Like, is the guy going to cancel on you, find a better paying job or what? Like, so, I mean, it's good for those good contractors who have kind of been able to manage that, but it's bad for like the end consumer. And the problem is the end consumer, because we've been devaluing it. So
exactly. We think labor is the same as, a soccer ball made in China on the shelf at Walmart, that there's just an endless supply of it. And actually, and it's not that you're not going to find good person that's available tomorrow, but usually you don't want the contractor that's available tomorrow.
Yeah.
Because the one that's worth it is booked out. Like, I know when I was doing my specialty, it was in the busy times, it was usually like, I'm 2 months out.
Yeah.
Like, if you said yes today, I'm 2 months out. And we're 2 weeks away at least from you saying yes, because I've got a busier project, get you a bid. You got to make a decision and get back to me. Oh, and I have 5 other bids out. So by the time you say yes, we could be looking at,
3-4 months,
a few extra weeks on that during the peak times. But the devaluing of the labor, and just to pontificate on it, I think comes from, the availability of cheap money. 100%. Now you've got a bunch of money chasing limited labor, which then creates, all sorts of perverse incentives for people, to make a quick buck, and they're not worried about doing work as well as they might, because, hey, I've got all the work I can handle coming in, and I'm getting paid for this stuff, and I'm moving on to the next one. And, and there's no repercussions. And so it's one, society has devalued the trades and people that do manual work. And then through that, then you've also got just less people drawn to that. And then people that are in it are stretched. I'm just kind of rambling here, but it's just not a healthy thing where we've like, cultures used to value building a cathedral.
Yeah.
And they knew it was going to take hundreds of years. And the people doing the work, they were like, this is my stone and I'm building a cathedral, like this is
had
amazing.
like, you had like teams of, or like hundreds of people working on these things, right? I mean, it was like all collective where it's like that. But I mean, I agree with you 100%. Like that just really resonated with me where you said, the cheap money, right? Because like I was saying, like maybe the trades, like how much you could charge for this and that, like it takes a couple weeks. Well, in a couple weeks, I could jump from one tech job to another tech job and make like 60 grand more a year because like I'm having Meta bid against Amazon or some shit like that, where it's like, all right, all I have to do is like sit behind a computer and then work like 20, 25 hours a week, but we'll call it 40. And, here we are. And, it's really unfortunate, but I think, as we're kind of coming into this, whether we're in a recession or not, it's beside the point. We're going to be in tough economic times, here in the next year or so. And I think because of that, because of what we've seen in housing and all these other things, a reversion back towards the trades, I think, would just be healthy for the country as a whole. But, like I said, I appreciate what you're doing and bringing in Bitcoin with them. I think like, would really resonate with that because like you said, it's like these jobs that you put in the proof of work, like the blue collar real guys, like, they seem to get it a little bit quicker than these tech bros who are just in it to make another quick buck.
And back to that real quick, something I forgot to get to is a lot of the people I work with send money home via remittance.
Oh yeah.
And that's when I'm like, hey, do you send money home? And they're like, yeah. And I said, what's your cost? And it's usually about 10% because they're sending $100, $200. And if you go to Western Union, that's about what it is for a small amount. But I did some research on this. It's about $350 billion of remittances worldwide per year, 30 billion in fees on that. So that's 30 billion of labor, mostly that's just getting skimmed off the top of that. And when I tell them like, you could send this instantly without having to go somewhere, without any identification to your family at home for, a penny if it's done on Lightning. And instantly.
Yeah.
100%. And then there's always a question, well, what do they do with it there? And I've usually said, well, you could then sell it on an exchange there, or even better. And I think is probably not too impractical to have people do is like, have them go to the market that they use and have them talk to the person there and be like, hey, do you know about this money? And just like I just gave, and usually I'm giving these guys some, like I have them download Moon Wallet and I zap them, 1,000, 5,000 sats, whatever it is on Lightning. And then they have it and they're blown away. And I'm like, boom. I was like, that was me to you, direct peer-to-peer money without anybody's permission. Notice you didn't even have to put an email or a phone number, give your identification, and you've got money. And they're like, what?
Yeah. I mean, it's
see it click.
Yeah.
And like, and now you could send that home right now for basically free.
Yeah.
And then in those communities at home, I think there's probably a better chance in a lot of like more rural, undeveloped areas. It's a smaller community. They're going to, they know the person that they go buy and their goods from, and they can go and start having those conversations there if they aren't already.
Yeah.
Because in talking to a lot of the Latinos that I work with, El Salvador is very popular with them. Everybody's aware of it and talking about it.
Yeah.
And people are going back there now, as we know.
Yeah, I know. And I mean, they're really cleaning it up and doing great stuff out there. But dude, I appreciate you coming in here, Shaun. And man. Once you build out this app and stuff, maybe we'll get a demo or something like that, or maybe we can show a little demo here tomorrow or something like that. I think tomorrow I'm gonna talk a little bit longer, maybe an all day thing. I don't know, but dude, thanks for coming in. If you don't mind, if you could like grab somebody else and tell them to come on in, that'd be great, man.
Yeah.
All right. Well, actually, before that, where can people find you, and where can they figure out like more of what you got going on?
So,
are you on Twitter, Noster?
Yes.
Okay.
All the above. So Twitter is It's Shaun Dunn.
All right, I'm about to hit you with the follow too.
Shaun Dunn 206. I think well, Green Candle. You followed me yesterday.
Oh, I did.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it's Shaun Shaun Dunn Dunn 206.
Okay.
I'm on the Noster. My Noster pub key is in my Twitter profile. Easysubcontractor.com.
Shaun Dunn 206.
Yeah, Shaun.
Oh, SH. Man, there's too many ways to
Shaun.
AUN.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Jeez. DUNN 206.
Shout out Shaun Dunn 206.
Yeah, and
there we go. I hit him with a little shout out. So everybody go follow him if you're following along the stream or watching it after the fact. Great stuff, man. Yeah, shout out to blue collar workers, man. Let's get that going. I know that there's the blue collar Bitcoin show and stuff like that. So shout out to those guys too. So yeah, man. All right. Well, if you could go grab somebody else. I think there was a new guy that just walked in with like a voltage hat.
Doug?
Yeah, I want to say Doug. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, grab Doug.
All right, I'll grab Doug.
All right, man.
All right, better y'all.